call to order the regular meeting. I call to order the regular meeting of the Ascension Parish Council, February 7th. Our invocation tonight will be led by the Reverend Rudolph Mitchell of the Greater Mount Pilgrim Baptist Church.
Let us bow our head with prayer. God, our Heavenly Father, we come just to thank you once again for this privilege and for this blessing to be in this great parish of Ascension. We ask you, dear God, to bless this country in which we live in. We ask you to bless this state in which we live in. We ask you, oh God, to bless our president of this great parish of Ascension. We ask you to look down upon each councilman to represent the district of this parish. Father God, we ask your blessing upon us right now, and we pray that this meeting will be fruitful and good for your honor and for your glory. We just thank you, Father God, for the citizen of this state and for the citizen of this parish. We ask you, dear God, for your grace and your mercy. Father God, these blessings we ask in Jesus' name, and for his sake we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Reverend Mitchell. Remain standing. Our pledge will be led by the Donaldsonville High School Air Force Junior ROTC cadets, Courtney Francis, Algermore Sullivan, Rachel Watts, and Major Donald Bailey. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Suzanne, everyone is present. Roll call. We're all present. I have a 2/3 emergency item. I will need a motion to put on the agenda. It concerns the beds at the prison.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Todd Lambert.
Second.
Seconded by, who was that? Mr. Adrian Thompson. Mr. Matassa. Okay, Mr. Hebert, come forward, please.
How y'all doing? Jerry Hebert with Grace and Hebert Architects. We're the architects working on the jail project. What we had done, there was actually, just to kind of bring you up to date to where we're at, they're driving the pilings on the expansion to the jail, which is the 300-bed expansion. It started construction, so there's a contract in place for that right now. What we're proposing to do is, in order to expedite some beds, we had done taken a auto mechanic warehouse, designed some 40 beds to go into it, and I think what we're proposing to do, we had gotten a price from the general contractor that's on site to do it for $571,000 to be able to let him go in and do it quickly. I think what they're proposing to do now is actually take and put it out for public bid. So I think what we're asking you to do is to be able to go ahead and authorize us to do that. It's my understanding on the documents, and I think it's in here, that money was in the original allocation for the bond issue, along with a couple other items, one being a little dormitory expansion we're doing in the front of the dorm. When we bid the project, it came in, we had budgeted 6.5, it came in under budget, so there's some other things that were done and added to it, and that's what this is. So I guess what we're asking today is to give us the opportunity to go and bid the trustee dorm renovation.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Todd Lambert. Second by Mr. Thompson.
No discussion.
Any discussion?
Second by me. Mr. Martinez, what do you know about this?
We're having a meeting tomorrow about 8:30,
in the morning to discuss a lot of these issues. For some reason, I don't think anybody knows who's in charge of the jail, but we're putting it all together. I know we're paying Mr. Abairnham as our architect. We want them to take control of this project. I think it's been going in different directions since it started. So we're going to discuss that tomorrow morning. We're going to make sure everybody's held accountable. I think Mr. Matassa can maybe give you a little more information on this particular item.
Mr. Matassa?
Okay, gentlemen, just to clarify a few things, way back, and I don't know which meeting it was, we had a gentleman in charge of this project, Mr. Ziegler, that wanted to bill it with in-house labor of the prisoners, and he thought that he didn't have to count that as part of the project, and legally you do, even though you don't pay them. So it goes over, way over the 100,000, and that's why we're asking y'all to public, to have it public bidded. Okay, now, the general contractor had submitted a price, which, according to Ziegler, it was way over. So that's why where we're at tonight, and we can't play around because, it's 40 beds that could keep people in prison instead of letting them out.
Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes. In this building is already some work have been done by the,
It was demoed by the prisoners, cleaned out, and we had the point right now to get a contractor to,
The original plan was to have the contractor that signed the main project was to proceed into this. And that's not what's happening. Obviously, we're gonna bid it because the parish decided, or I guess you're gonna decide whether we bid it or not. But right now, the plan is to go ahead and bid that piece of the project as a separate piece. That doesn't mean that contractor can't bid it. I mean, I'm sure Thompson will bid it when it comes out. One of the problems with taking, and any time you do a dormitory type situation, is you got to add sprinkler and fire alarm and all these things when you're housing inmates, and that's one of the things that's driving the costs up. And there's just nothing, it's code issues that we got to deal with, and there's not a whole lot we can do about it.
maybe I'm kind of confused on this, and maybe I'm just saying. This was an existing building that we was going to modify to become the 40 beds, correct?
that's
Now
the
we
house
already have,
trustees that work, just minimal security.
right.
And, like I say, somebody else was over this project that wanted to do it in-house, but it was way over the price that you can do it legally in-house. When he saw the other bid from the general contractor, he thought it could be a lot less, and so that's why we're here tonight to say we need to bid this thing so we can move on.
I'm just trying to clarify something. I just thought that building was going to be rented, we was going to add some stuff to it, but now you're saying that building is,
It was a mechanic shop. It's gutted out, and it's planned. Mr. Abair and them drew the plans, so it's ready to go to bid. And originally, the general contractor had given a price on it, which,
okay. No, you just said the word, gut it out, you didn't tear the whole thing down.
no.
No, that's why when y'all say, demolition on it, I just
The
thought y'all
interior,
told.
the interior
Okay.
is good. That's it.
Okay.
And it didn't have any mechanical, electrical had to be redone. So I mean, it's basically you're starting with a shell.
Okay.
Mr. Kluwer?
Yeah, Mr. Abair,
Yes, sir.
basically, y'all put together the estimate for the project
Yes, sir. We put
as the
together-
architects? Y'all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The estimate, and I don't know what piece of paper you're looking at, but
I'm looking at the
this one?
sheet to Miss Suzanne Patterson.
the one you said.
Okay. I just want to make sure y'all got the same thing.
Sure.
Yeah, we put together the estimate on that. Sure did. But it's just about $580,000. So.
And that's your best estimate, put together Life Safety 101,
That's
everything?
Yes, sir.
Everything
That's
included?
everything. Hopefully, we can get it for less than that when we
Yeah.
bid it out, but I think that's a reasonable number.
Okay.
Mr. Shake Snyder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Grace, Mr. Abear, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We had some issues that we were looking at as part of Councilman Joseph and I with ACUD, getting some figures for water pressure and everything because it was so important with the sprinkler system and everything. And ACUD is in the process of upgrading in that area and needs to know as quickly as possible what is needed, the pressures and the flows and the things of that sort. So can we make sure that we get that information as quickly as possible?
Yeah, we actually had a meeting, I think it was Monday, at the jail, Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm sorry. Anyway, we met and went through all that with the engineers that are handling that. That piece is actually not being handled by Grace and Abear Architects. We were contracted to just handle the jail construction. The sewer and the water was actually being handled by the parish, and I think other engineers are doing that. So, but they know the flows that we need to the building. Right now, the only issue is making sure we get the water pressures we need. If we can't do that, then we'll have to make some adjustments at the building for pumps or whatever. But we're working on that right now. We know it's an issue. I think that's why they want to meet tomorrow to hash all that out and get everybody working on the same page so we can make sure when we got all the services we need when the building's finished.
Yeah, we want to be able to provide water to them as soon as possible. So we need to know.
I know it's moving. I know Glenn's working on it.
Mr. Valentine?
Well, I think one of the reasons I think it was split up too much checks out because of the STAG grant money and some money that we might have access to that wouldn't have been legitimate for the expansion, and that's why it was separate on this situation. Also, let me clarify something. I don't know who said it, but said we budgeted for this. We actually budgeted only $100,000 for this, and you can see it's a lot more than $100,000. But the original bid came in lower than anticipated, plus we had, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Abear, $700,000 of contingents that we put in with, and Mr. Abear might not be privy to that, but the bonding that we did, we put that in. So unfortunately, this will eat up most of the contingency we had put in for the bond issue that we decided to sell for. But at first, this building was only supposed to be a minimum security that he was going to house trustees in. When I say he, I'm talking about the sheriff. And it was some things that went through, as was stated previous, that the gentleman was handling before, that was done, that was not essentially done properly. And that's why it's coming back to us.
Yeah, and in order to get my head around it, George, what I did is I got the bond issue information. Right now, this is the way I understand it. Not counting the sewer and the water, just for the jail project itself, there's about I'm going to round the numbers off, $7.4 million. Today, we've allocated between the dormitory change order number 1, which I'm hoping was approved by the parish. It was signed anyway, which was to add some piling for that little expansion we want to do in front of it, which we need to find out whether that was actually approved. Right now, all we have is a change order to do the piling. So anyway, it gets you to about $5.6 million. It leaves $1.8 million in total, is the way I see it. Now, I'm not a bond attorney by any means, but the numbers they sent me show about 1.8 left in the remaining balance. And obviously, anything you take out of that, if you do a little expansion in the front.
Well, some of that, I think, will go to the sewage and for the water, so we have that.
Yeah, well, the sewer and the water were separate line items.
Right.
And the sewer and water looked like you had about $2 million and $250 for the water. And I don't know if they had to move some money around to make it all work or not, but
well, I'm sure the parish president will fight it out with the sheriff tomorrow. Yeah. I'm sure he'll take care of it.
Anyway, but I think any other questions?
Yeah, I guess that's what y'all trying to get to, Tommy, but we just want some project management as a center point of this project, like any other commercial or industrial project, where anything that the civil engineers are doing, mechanical, electrical, and architectural, everybody's on the same page.
And no problem.
Just some accountability for the money.
No, we're actually, we're out doing inspections on our stuff once a week and getting reports. We actually post them on the internet website so everybody has access to them. So anyway, we're out doing our part of it. We just weren't involved in the other part. We'll be glad to do whatever y'all need us to do to make sure it gets done.
Thank you, sir.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Next is our public comment period. If anyone wants to speak on any item on the agenda, please sign in with Ms. Suzanne. At this time, I'd like to bring up our next council meeting is scheduled for February 21st, and this is the first day of the Police Jury Annual Conference in Alexandria. And I will need a motion to move a few meetings. I'd like to move that meeting to Thursday, February 28th, and our council meeting scheduled for March the 6th, move it to March the 13th in Donaldsonville. And the council meeting scheduled for March 20th, move it to March 27th in Gonzales. And the reason for that, it gives us a 2-week window in case there's any advertisements or anything.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Shakespeare.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kluart. Any discussion? Any opposition?
One thing.
Mr. Shakespeare?
Are we settled on when the finance meeting is going to be tagged up? Does that affect?
On the 27th.
It'll be on the 27th, but
Yes.
for the next month. Okay.
Yeah, the next finance meeting will be March the 27th in Gonzales.
Okay. I'll say. Thank
All right,
you.
sir. Thank you. Next is presentations. At this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Kent Shakespeare, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Plenty of time we have some things that go bad. I wanted to let people know about something that went good. I'd like to congratulate a few people. Chief Jason Broussard from Sorrento Tuesday afternoon called me. He just received his information from PIAL, and it was good news that the town of Sorrento Fire Department, their rating went down from a 10 to a 4. And as you know, last year they went through some issues, and because of paperwork issues, the rating went up. And after 9 months of tremendous amount of work, believe me, I went down around there a few times, Chief Broussard, and he was right quick to acknowledge all the members of the fire department, all the work they did to really come through, and so it's a good thing for the people of the parish and the people of the town of Sorrento. And I'd also like to thank the rest of the parish because they got their overhead protection for the other trucks that they have there. So the awning was a very good thing, and they really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shakespeare. Bring back some more good news. Next, item number 6, our parish president report.
Well, I have 2 good news items and 1 not so good. So, but other than that, it's informational only. I'm not asking anybody to vote on anything tonight. We started a striping project today. We're going to do over 70 roads, and that's about 3 times more than we generally would let. So that started today, and Mr. Shakespeare will be proud to know that Monday they're going to put the final layer on Highway 44 around Pelican Point. So the state's going to handle that. Another little update, I think Mr. Valentine, on the 621 73 interchange. We've been working real close with the state. We've been putting a lot of pressure on the contractor and the engineer, not the contractor. That project's been delayed about a year because every time the contractor brings it to DOTD, it just doesn't meet the requirements. So I had called DOTD and asked them. I mean, I was thinking that I was going to bring it to y'all to fire them, but they did say that it would probably be better if we worked with this engineer, and so hopefully we can get that let this year, even though it's a year behind. It's not the state's fault on this one. It's basically the engineer. So, but we are working hard on that project.
That's the dual turn lane, Mr. Martinez?
That's the intersection improvement at 621 and 73. We're going to be doing some road projects in that area that'll tie into that, so that should hopefully alleviate some of the congestion in that area, which is sorely needed. And I guess the last thing I want to make a report. I put a memo in your packets about sewer. We had some problems. The first day out on the job, we got a report that we were dumping sewer at Lamar-Dixon. We weren't permitted to do so. We took a proactive approach. We met, we did some investigating, and basically found out that it started when Katrina hit as an emergency measure because the electricity was off at some of our sewer plants. And it just continued for the past 2.5 years. So I asked Mr. Turner to write a letter to DEQ. So we took the proactive approach. We haven't heard back from them yet. We're hoping to. Hopefully they'll be gentle with us. But we've on the agenda tonight, you'll see a couple of items that'll do it right. And we're taking a corrective action. So I just kind of wanted to brief you on that a little bit. And to let you know, this is going to probably cost us about $120,000 a year. But when you start getting in the sewer business, it gets to be expensive. I've asked Bert Falk to come in and talk to you at the next meeting about sewer and where we're headed and where we need to go, because it's just going to become more and more expensive. I don't think your user fees on these small plants are going to be able to handle it. I don't think in areas that they are, that they'll be able to pay the user fees. So we found that out with Country Ridge. It's been, when I was in office, we went to EPA in Dallas on a couple occasions. I see we're spending more money on it again. So we need to, look at sewage real hard. We need to make some tough decisions and decide what direction this parish is going to go in. So again, that's all information. And I'm having Lindsay draft an ordinance, maybe to reconvene the Home Rule Charter Commission, just for your thought at this point. So if anybody's got any input that they want to talk about between now and the next meeting on how this should be formed, I would certainly welcome the input. And if at all you're interested, I'd like to get some feedback from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Ben.
Mr. Valentine?
Yeah, just one comment to Parish President. I want to commend the administration for doing such an excellent job with the disclosure, because this is something that, several of us up on this dais work in industry, and that's one thing. You essentially police yourself, but they come and check you quite often, and if something like this would not be disclosed from prior administration, it would really look bad and reflect on present administration, which I think Parish President Martinez is trying to rectify, and I appreciate him taking the bull by the horns and making sure that this is available to us. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Anyone else? Okay, item number 7, consent agenda. Adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of December 20th, 2007. Adopt minutes of the regular council meeting of January 10th, 2008. And adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 17th, 2008.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. We'll move into the general business section. Number 8, request to raise speed limit in Lakes of Ascension subdivision from 15 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. Councilman George Valentine.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Joseph.
Discussion.
Discussion?
Okay, yeah. Let me explain why this is on the agenda. This was essentially accidentally done. It may have been discussed, but in our procedures last year, it took a petition. 90% of the people had to, or over 90% had to do this, and for some reason this kind of slipped through the cracks. They went in there and they changed the speed limits when this really was never on the agenda, but for some reason it did show up and we did vote on it back in December, so I want to rectify that, so that's why it's on the agenda, just to let the rest of the council know.
Okay. Any more discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. Number 9, approval of payment of $22,000 to Riparian Incorporated for work performed Kelly Haggard Repairing Incorporate.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Valentine.
Second.
Who was the second? Second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any discussion?
I do know a little bit about this also. This has to do, if you didn't have an explanation, it had to do with the wetlands delineation for the jail project. This is something that was contracted, and it was not brought forth to for the council for approval. And this has been completed, and they've done a great job, and they did it in a very timely manner, much quicker than most other firms would have done it. And they need to be paid, so that's why we need to approve it.
Any more discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. Number 10, resolution for contract renewals. Legal counsel, Ms. Lindsay Manda.
Good evening, council. As you all know, we have over 300 contracts in the finance office, the legal department, many of which are renewed yearly. We bring them before you in the finance committee and also in council. What this resolution would do if no terms are changing, all we would do would be to notify the chairman and the finance committee chairman, and that way we're not clogging up the agendas with these contracts. I'll go ahead and read the resolution. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council authorizes various contracts for the orderly conduct of parish business, and whereas some contracts contain an option to renew the contract based on a continuance of terms and conditions originally stipulated and costs of providing such services, now therefore be it resolved that parish president, and that's going to be Tommy Martinez, is hereby authorized to exercise the option to renew to provide the service in such contracts on the same terms and conditions as originally approved by the parish council, provided that funds have been allocated in the budget.
Okay.
Motion.
Second. Motion by Mr. Dempsey Lambert, second by Mr. Benny Johnson. Any discussion? Opposition? Motion carries. Number 11, resolution to adopt a cooperative endeavor agreement between the Parish of Ascension and the City of Donaldsonville. Parish will perform all work necessary and shall provide all material required to establish and install an 8-inch force main pipeline from the parish jail to the Donaldsonville sewer treatment plant. All costs and expenses of work and installation shall be borne by the Parish of Ascension. Ms. Manda, do you have anything on that? Or?
This is just authorizing us to enter into a cooperative endeavor that Mr. Jeff Diaz drafted with the City of Donaldsonville. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Motion.
Need a motion by Mr. Thompson,
Second.
second by Mr. Shakespeare. Any discussion? Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, do we have any costs on this project?
Any costs?
Yeah.
I don't have any hard costs, but the parish will be responsible for all costs.
All costs, but we don't know what that cost
We don't
is,
have
so it's an
that.
open check.
Yes,
No,
It's part of the jail project.
it is.
and you're talking about the fees for the jail, Mr. Lambert, that's what you're referring to?
The project of running this pipe, the cost for
The
running this pipe.
installation.
Oh, that cost there, I think it was around like $1.92 million.
It's not included in the contract that I received, so I can't tell you.
Just say it when they say it all costs,
Right.
and that's basically what it did for the whole line from the jail hall.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion? Mr. Kluart?
Is that part of the jail money,
Yes.
bonded money? Good deal.
Okay. Anybody else? Any more? Any opposition? Motion carries. Number 12, contract with BFI doing business Allied Waste for accepting and proper disposal of municipal sanitary sewer waste sludge from various treatment facilities owned or operated by Ascension Parish government in an amount not to exceed $50,000. Mr. Turner.
Chairman Bell, members of council, President Martinez addressed this issue earlier as to what had taken place. To kind of follow up on that, what this is an annual contract with Allied Waste, or BFI, to accept municipal solid waste sludge for proper disposal in a landfill. This is licensed by the state and it would enable us in for on an annual contract to dispose of our sludge in a proper manner. This is an item that will probably continue to grow as sewers grow, if they grow in the parish, which I would anticipate they would, that this is an item that would continue to grow and that we would need to increase probably annually. But it'd be something that we'd come back and look at you and ask for that. We currently have 5 facilities that we own and dispose of sludge on.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Mr. Joseph?
Mr. Bond, are we collecting fees from these sewer systems that we're going to be paying this amount of money?
I think I best quote President Martinez is that sewer is not a moneymaker. And we are collecting fees on these facilities, but bottom line, we're not making any money on it. The fees will go for maintenance of the facilities and the proper disposal of the waste. But yes, we are collecting fees on all of them.
Any more discussion? Any more discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. 13, contract with MasterVac to vacuum and haul sanitary sewer waste from various treatment facilities owned or operated by Ascension Parish government to a licensed disposal site designated by the parish in the amount not to exceed $40,000. Mr. Turner?
This is the complement to the disposal contract. What this is the hauling of the waste from the treatment facilities to the landfill. This is a licensed, approved vehicle that's utilized to haul waste to this site, so to the landfill. So we recommend that you approve this also. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Valentine. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. 14, acceptance of bid for 2007 RC02 Road Reconstruction Program from R.J. Daigle & Sons in the amount of $957,858.79. Mr. Turner.
This gives me more pleasure to speak on than the previous 2 items. We're very proud of how we're doing on our road construction projects. They are moving forward. We're putting them under contract relatively quickly. This particular one is the 5th contract that we would have in the last 6 months that we put under contract. It is for 22 roads. We had estimated that this would cost about $3.2 million. Fortunately, as you can see, it came in less than that, so it really looks good. Kind of there are 22 roads in this contract that we will be doing. We currently, with the striping contract that President Martinez told you about, that we had about 70 roads under that will be striping starting today, that we'll have probably 60 to 70 roads under construction at this point, plus those 70. So we are really moving forward very well. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have. We do have 2 other contracts that we're working on very hard, and we'll bring those to you as we get those developed, but we're working very hard on those.
Motion to accept the bid.
Motion, Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Mr. Kluart. Any discussion? Discussion, Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, Mr. Bob, I know we got a transportation meeting coming up
Yes.
Tuesday. A lot of, for the new guys here, you might want to have the road list on what roads are actually getting done on these projects, not only this one, but the outgoing, one that's ongoing right now.
Thank you very much for suggesting that. We do intend to bring to you so that all of you know the roads that we'll have under contract. We'll go my intent is to give you the 2005 roads that were just completed, the 2006 that we did in-house, where we're at on Joseph Ario and Boutreaux Road, and then the first phase of the 2007, plus the second phase, that's this one. So we'll give you quite a bit of information to let you see how many roads we've got under contract and where we're at. By the way, the contractor is really working good. We're not having any problems on any of the projects. They're moving forward very quickly, and we're very pleased with that.
Also, some of the guys that's not on the committee, maybe forward them road lists.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Mr. Schexnayder?
You had mentioned that they're not having any problems on any of the projects. That includes Brittany Street, because some of that's coming up. That's being addressed.
I'm sorry, which is that?
Brittany Street in Sorrento.
Yes.
That's being addressed.
When I say problems, I'm talking about something that would be extraordinary. There are a kind of a routine thing. There's raveling of asphalt in some cases, and we go back and require the contractor to fix that. That's that's quote not a big deal, but
it was a big deal.
I didn't mean to dismiss that.
Mr. Valentine?
Yeah. Mr. Bob, you mentioned the 206 project. Am I correct in saying that didn't R.J. Daigle, isn't he some of the contract on 206?
Yes.
He got the one that we awarded in Gonzales, and now he's got this one. So this is like $6 million, plus he's got, I guess my question would be, does he have a plan, does R.J. Daigle have a plan to make sure that we finish the 206 project before we move on to any of the other ones? Because there are several roads that haven't even been touched yet in the 206.
I agree. The answer is yes.
Okay.
In fact, the 206, we're somewhere around 50% of that project that's completed now, and that was just late last fall. So he is moving forward, and we anticipate that you have preparation of roads, and then you have the resurfacing, and then you have the cleanup, and it'll be kind of a train, if you will, as he moves through those. So,
right.
No, we're very concerned and watching that very closely, but we feel confident that he can do that.
Well, and that's my concern. He is a very competent contractor. They do excellent work, have done excellent work in our parish, but we don't want too much,
certainly
where
what
we
you're saying.
jump on new projects and we got to complete our old ones.
I certainly understand
thank
that.
you.
Any more discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Bow. 15, we have hazard mitigation planning pilot grant update. Ms. Martha Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, President Martinez. I'm here tonight just to give you a little brief background on the hazardous mitigation planning pilot program, and then I'll call up Mr. Luke Contreras from Shaw that will do a short presentation. For those of you who were not here last year, this is a $150,000 grant that comes from FEMA and GOSEP. The parish has no funds that will be allocated. It was not a match. And we came to the council. It was approved to go out for this, and we went out for an RFQ for our qualifications for this program, and Shaw was the recipient of it. So we had to follow these guidelines in order for us to receive a portion of the funds through FEMA. So that's just a little background for you to know where this is coming from. This is mandated by FEMA that we update our plan for future issues that might arise. And at this time, I would like to bring up Mr. Luke Contreras, and he'll have a short presentation just to tell you where we are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Council, Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to present to you. Those of you who are new to the Council, we could probably call this Hazard Mitigation Planning 101. Those of you who have been around a while, it might be just a refresher. I'll try to be brief. I will be brief. You have a series of slides, I think, in your packet. It looks something like this. And I'd like to introduce Ms. Nicole Baranzan. Nicole, if you'd stand. Nicole is actually the project manager on this project in Ascension Parish. She's also working 5 other parishes. So if you have any specific questions, I'll have to rely on Nicole But as far as the overall picture, I'm going to give you a little heads up on what's going on and why we're doing it. And as Martha mentioned, this is one of those lucky projects, one of those good projects where it's federal money but no match. There's a little match from the federal state standpoint, but that match does not go down to you at the parish level. The state is picking up that match with some FEMA Katrina Rita funds. We've been working closely since we started the project several months ago with Dr. Keller and Martha Ms. Collins, also Bill Rue in Drainage, Rick Weber, and OEP, and Bob, Mr. Turner, as a function of Public Works, and Councilman Josephs attended some of the meetings already. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you. We're updating the hazard mitigation plan. Now, it wasn't long ago that FEMA required all counties, all parishes in the country to do a hazard mitigation plan. And when I say hazard here, we're talking natural hazards. Right, not man-made hazards, not something that may happen in industry, but we're talking about storm events. There was an exercise that we went through to identify what events in your parish in particular would be important. Things like tsunamis were ruled out. Things like tornadoes were ruled out. We may have a tornado, but it's not the kind of thing we can plan for. The odds are so minor. So it's hazard events that are critical and common to Ascension Parish. So number one, we want to update the hazard mitigation plan, and something that's new in the update, even though, like I said, you did one just a couple of years ago. After Katrina and Rita, FEMA realized in Louisiana that several issues were not addressed in previous plans, and some of the plans weren't done adequately in the first place. I'll go over some of those issues in a moment. But the idea is not only to identify projects that could help you mitigate a hazard event, but to prioritize those projects and what the feds are calling scope that project, which means preliminary engineering light. In other words, a cursory look at a project and a preliminary cost estimate, so that the state can then identify projects at the state level that may be common to all parishes and help the state to prioritize certain projects and determine the order of magnitude of those projects. Next slide. Martha already spoke about the money situation and how it went from federal to state, so we'll move on to the next slide. And there's a real fancy definition on hazard mitigation, but what it boils down to, if you just replace the word mitigation with prevention, that's what mitigation is all about, is preventing or lessening a situation. In your parish, in Ascension Parish, we're dealing with hurricanes, no two ways about it, and also tropical storms. And when I say hurricanes and tropical storms, we're dealing with flood events and we're dealing with wind. Now, when we deal with flood events, it doesn't have to be a hurricane. It could be a riverine flooding. You know, if it rains 5 or 6, 7 inches for several days in southern Mississippi, you're going to get it down here as a function of the Manchac and the Amite. So there's riverine flooding from stormwater events, backwater flooding, surge coming up Pontchartrain to Manchac, and something new that the feds added this year, levee failure. That's one of those things that Katrina dropped on us. And you think levee failure, there's a few maps we'll see later, and you have some levees on the backside. One issue of significant concern is not just the backwater levee. What if we had a flood like we had in '73 and the Mississippi River's as high as it got and the levee broke? So we're looking at levee failure and the impacts it would have on communities throughout Louisiana. So that's a big issue. Next slide. I hope you can see those slides. If not, those are in your hand. The light's a little bright over there. Why hazard mitigation planning? Number one, look at the big picture. All right, so from the state's perspective, they're looking at the big picture. From the parish, they're looking at the big picture, which gets down to individual projects, but it's parish-wide. Secondly, one of the things from the last time this project was done in all the parishes, the federal government and the state felt like adequate representation was weak, that there weren't enough people, enough key stakeholders. In this case, we have a list of 43 members on the stakeholders list dealing with Ascension Parish. And this list is open. You know, if someone else wants to participate, it's an open-ended list, but this list came from you of the parish council, parish administration, different public work sectors, sheriff, fire chief, et cetera, and so on. So there's 43 people that are involved in this thing. The idea is we're meeting about every quarter, and to have as many people involved in that project. Next slide. If you look toward the middle there, present Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, as I mentioned earlier, it's some new dollars that came from Katrina Rita because the state just didn't feel like it had protected itself. So in this case, those funds establish a pre-disaster hazard mitigation program. So the idea is to set yourself up beforehand, inventory what the worst case scenario is, and how do you as a parish stand in that regard. So why update? Next slide. In summary, FEMA's revised its approach. We want to incorporate that Katrina Rita data, and that assuming levee failure is big in many, many parishes, obviously. There's new advisory base flood elevations and new base flood elevations. We need to incorporate those advisory base flood elevations. Implement or address the projects that have been implemented, already built or constructed from the previous plan, and in essence take those out. Identify new projects, and as I mentioned, expand that public involvement component. Next. In terms of key ingredients, number one, we're dealing with the entire parish, we're dealing with the steering committee, and we're dealing with the general public. We're on TV. We've been on TV repeatedly. I had people coming in from work telling me that they saw me on TV again last night. Apparently you guys are repeating that quite often, that first presentation that we made. We're using your tax assessors database for identifying values of property. In some cases, when an adequate database isn't available, we're dealing with what the FEMA calls HAZAS, which is a very broadly based land use component that deals with cost. We're actually using actual census data also. And we're also looking at and reviewing previous plans that you in Ascension Parish have had done. Nicole has a list of those plans. There's 5 or 6 different plans that we're using, and we're updating this plan in particular. Next slide. Just briefly, the Ascension Chamber of Commerce, the Parish Council, each of you actually will receive notice of these meetings when they come up. Each parish councilman is represented on the steering committee. Other parish agencies, the sheriff, OEP, Martha in the grant section. Now, this is a multi-jurisdictional plan. Last time it was done in Ascension Parish, Donaldsonville decided to go it alone, and they did their own plan. This time, Donaldsonville, Gonzales, and Sorrento are all participating in the planning process, so Ascension Parish will have one plan. We'll end up having resolutions from you, the council, and also resolutions from those 3 municipalities approving the plan from the federal standpoint. East and West Ascension drainage districts, all 3 fire districts, the Parish levee district. There's some engineering representation on the drainage side, and also Donaldsonville Chamber of Commerce. So you can see how we went out and with a broad-based stroke to bring in as much involvement as we can and people in the know with the critical issues that deal with mitigation planning in Ascension Parish. This next map, next slide rather, is a map that shows that we started off with a base map. We worked closely with your GIS folks, Dr. Keller's help, and we'll just run through a few maps, just kind of give you a general idea. Next map is Ascension Parish with a map of 100-year floodplains. If we could go to that next map, it shows a little more clearly that area in blue. That's the parish area of inundation for a tropical storm, Allison. So tropical storms, you know, as you all know, not necessarily wind events, but rain events. We can see about more than half, almost 2/3 of your parish was inundated. You can also see a little on the right, some existing levees, and up on the northwest corner, a little levee there. We're dealing with all the pump stations, all the levees. A very intense inventory is taking place. Next map. Here you can see a surge event from the east. That's going to be Pontchartrain, Maurepas, and backwater coming up. Next slide. If you see, you'll see again inundation. This is flood risk assessment areas in blue. Those areas that are susceptible to flooding from rainwater events and surge. Red also identifies repetitive loss structures. That's a repetitive loss structure, residential and commercial and government facilities. The yellow area in this case are the critical facilities on this map. Next map identifies a levee failure. Now you can see this flooding is in essence not coming from the backside, but sort of coming from the middle and spreading out. This is a map that shows you what would happen if the Mississippi River reached project flood and the levee broke. And again, this is a hypothetical situation. Again, you see most of your parish are flooded. So this is the type of analysis we're doing, and we're doing this for all the parishes that we're working with. And if I'm not mistaken, FEMA is taking a lot of work we're doing because we're sort of one of the lead consultants in this work and modifying some of the other scopes to look at a broadly based approach such as this. Next slide. Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. You may see it in some of your correspondence as HMGP. We hopefully there'll be a pot of money in the future. In the airport business, we call it putting plans on the shelf, having plans on a shelf for discretionary money. The idea here is to look at some projects, and getting ahead, is to look at projects that are eligible to this one source, HMGP funds. Now, not all projects for hazard mitigation are eligible for HMGP funds. But what we want to do is identify those projects in your parish that are eligible for those funds, do that scoping, and get some preliminary early plans on the shelf. So if and when some discretionary money comes through, you're ready. That's worked well for us in the airport business by looking ahead. In this case, Uncle Sam's helping you to pay for those having those plans on the shelf. So you're not going out on the limb. Nicole, let's look at some eligible projects by way of example. They use the term hardening or retrofitting, and they're asking us to focus from an eligibility standpoint on critical facilities. Like, by way of example, the courthouse and all the windows at the courthouse. And you folks use the courthouse for various functions during the emergency. I know you got an emergency set up down there, but the idea is to keep the courthouse operating fully. In several parishes, what do they call that, Nicole, with the windows? Film. They're putting film in those windows where it doesn't really, you don't see the film, but it prevents shattering, that type of thing. Some people are looking to raise generators, do things about getting emergency services and fuel tanks off the first floor where this could be subject to flooding. Next slide. Drainage improvements to existing facilities. Now, not new drainage improvements, but improvements in hardening facilities. Think about safe houses. That became an issue again in Katrina, New Orleans, where people who normally man pump stations had to bail out, had to leave because of the threats on their lives. The idea is that safe houses are eligible for funding. You folks at Marvin Bro Pump Station, you're working right now, maybe having plans drawn up, or maybe have funds ready to construct to put a new shell on that facility. If you go out there now, you can see some of that stuff is rusting. You all know more about that than I do, but that is a typical eligible project to harden that. Thank you, sir. To harden that facility to allow manpower to stay safe. Things like that are eligible. Next slide. There are projects ongoing throughout the state with residential dwellings as far as floodproofing and dry floodproofing. Generally, this is a function of repetitive losses where they have been damaged to a certain percentage of the value. But those types of projects are eligible for this funding. However, in parishes that we're working on, most have other sources of funds for that on an individual residential basis. And our projects have a tendency to focus on government structures for the time being. Next slide. That link ties into the elevation and the ABFEs. This is, as a matter of fact, this is a Grand Isle photograph. Some parishes 20 feet, they have an elevate these structures 20 feet high to get above that surge and velocity force wave elevations. Next slide, I mentioned community shelters, safe rooms. There's a thing called the 5% initiative. 5% initiative, 5% of the funds are set aside for not quite typical hardening projects like public education, warning systems, again, generators, your pump stations and your generators and your hospitals and your OEP facilities and your fire stations, wherever your emergency activities occur. There's funding for those type projects. One or two more slides. The mitigation funds in the past have varied. Pre-Katrina, only about 40 million was targeted for the state of Louisiana. Post-Katrina, 1.5 billion has been targeted. So it's almost, for round figures, about a 40-time increase in funding potential. In this case, funding is not available for these HMGP funds. Again, the process, the idea is to get plans on the shelf, for you to identify typical projects that are eligible here, and to scope those projects. So two things I'd like for you to remember in summary. Number one, the plan itself identifies every project that you, the parish, can identify to prevent or lessen damage to any type of hazard that we can imagine in your region. Number two, those projects that are eligible for this HMGP type funding, we're going to scope. All right? Now, there's not a lot of money for scoping, so we can't take a Morvenboro pump station and say we want to go build another one at half that size somewhere else and do preliminary plans for the amount of money allocated. But we can certainly do very light engineering plans to do a benefit cost analysis. All right? But to do a benefit cost analysis, we have to have the cost. So we have to do enough engineering to establish a cost and then measure the benefit. If there's a $10 million project out there that's going to save 3 houses from flooding twice, the benefit cost is going to fall through. But if there's a $5 million project that's going to save 3 or 4 subdivisions, that's the lesson FEMA learned. You might try to prevent something, but if a levee breaks and you lose the city for a year, the benefit is much more than what it used to be. So there's a different way of looking at benefit cost in that regard. So we have to identify projects, prioritize projects, and then select the ones with the best benefit cost ratio, and that's what we're working on. And we're about, halfway finished, Nicole? About halfway finished. We've had several meetings, and I hope from this brief presentation that, next slide, that you'll, if at all possible, attend our next meeting, which is not scheduled yet, but middle of March. If the opportunity provides itself, it'll probably be at the courthouse in Gonzales again. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain any questions, or feel free to contact me or Nicole in Baton Rouge at the Shaw Building. Any questions tonight? Any comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clore?
Yes, you're talking about eligible projects. And you'd mentioned that there's not funding for if we want to go put another pumping station in and stuff like that.
Not eligible for this HMGP pot that we're dealing with.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So how much is it eligible? One thing I'm just asking, because as we came in, there's just been large amount bonded in the drainage, East Ascension Gravity Drainage District, for projects. How much has the scope of what you guys are working on versus the scope of where that's gone, has that been correlated or worked together?
All projects that are in existing plans in Ascension Parish are included in the plan. We went through and got all previous plans and brought all those projects up to the front. They all will be included in the plan. And to be eligible for any future FEMA funds for these type of projects, these projects have to be in that plan. So this is a federal requirement where the federal government is saying we're trying to take the quote-unquote politics out of flood protection. We want to be objective. So we want more people involved, and we want all the work that's been done before, and we want these projects prioritized and identified, and then pick the ones that this small pot is eligible for. So, but when larger funds come down from the federal government, wherever and whenever, the projects that you want to fund need to be in this plan for the foreseeable future. Now, once these projects are funded out of this HMGP, there's going to be a 25% match. Am I correct? Those funds that you have budgeted and bonded can take that 25% out of that pot and plug it into FEMA. You'd be a step ahead of a lot of parishes. Certainly can be to your advantage.
Right now, we got projects talking about the courthouse, safe house. We just signed a contract on that. That's no longer eligible project. That's correct.
If the project has begun already?
It hasn't begun, we just signed.
What about the...
If the contract's been signed,
that's something we can certainly work with Martha on.
And the other thing is that when we talk about bringing Laurel Reef levee up to the 100-year flood, which is an existing levee, and I heard you say existing situation. I think that would probably be another project that would be eligible. It's a small pool of money. What are we talking about?
Nicole?
We have that project on our list, but GOSEP doesn't generally, in their words, fund levee projects. But they said if it was a small-scale project on a locally owned levee, it could be eligible. So we're putting all of those in the plan just in case, but it depends on, it's at their discretion. So if they choose to fund it, then it could be eligible.
I just want to ask the short question. The 10-year plan that the East Ascension Gravity Drainage District has in place, projects that are funded or to be funded for that project, are they on your list? Have y'all seen that, and they are on your list?
Yes.
Okay.
Just address that, Randy. We have included the Drainage Department, Bill Rue, in all of our meetings. Now, some of them he was not able to meet, but he has been a part of this plan to provide information to our consultants.
Yeah, I just want to know if the projects were on there. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So,
and trying to figure out where our eligibility goes for the size of the projects.
so
I figure we're a locally owned levee system ourselves.
At this point in time, we have 80 projects. Several came out of the previous plan, and we added 10 or 20 with the new plan, but we were very, very comprehensive in reaching out in previous efforts. And like I tell you, the people that we have on here that we spend a lot of time with your OEP and your drainage districts, we think we have a lot. Now, Tommy's making a point. Once we finish this thing to the point where we've identified projects, the next thing is to prioritize those projects, regardless of their eligibility. And which ones you feel are most critical, to have those on the shelf and identify them as a top priority, keeping in mind that these projects at Ascension are going to be fed to the state system, as are all other parishes, and the state's going to then put a program together to go to our congressional delegations saying we in Louisiana identify these projects as a top priority, so give us a pot of money, whether it's levees, whether it's pump stations. We're going to be at the mercy of all parishes in the state. But for this smaller pots of money, this gives you an opportunity to take those right here and now to your congressional delegation, to FEMA, to move forward on that, and we want to work on what you, the parish, feel are the top priorities.
What kind of time frame do we have on this?
Months. We're about halfway through, Nicole. When we expect to be finished?
Probably August. We have until November, but we're hoping to get it done sooner than that. GOSEP's changed up a couple of procedures along the way, so we're dealing with
FEMA doesn't change often, y'all know that.
Yeah, we know.
But we're still caught up in that they're not changing often situation.
Right.
So there's been a little slippage from the federal standpoint, and they asked us to go ahead and request an extension on all parishes that we're working on, but I can't make a living by extending, so we're still trying to maintain that rate. Mr. Joseph?
Yes, sir. The $1.5 billion, and I know it's future, I know that, but when do you estimate the time frame when that money going to be released?
Not until
2 years, 3 years?
Not until the plans are complete, and the state then incorporates those plans into their plan, and that's brought up to FEMA. But I wouldn't, Nicole and Bob, you probably know more about this than a lot of you who work with FEMA. When do you think some of this HMGC money would be available?
I think you were very accurate in determining the time as to when FEMA gets it, but they have a group of individuals that will research every one of these plans, and there'll be in excess of 70 HMGP plans that they will have to review. So my guess is that it's going to take them 3, 4, 5 months to go through that process. A lot of the plans will look a lot alike because a lot of us have the same problems in the parish, and a lot of us are proposing the same solutions. But I would say it'd be 6 months after they deliver the plans to FEMA at the earliest.
So Bob, I'm just trying to understand this here. You're saying they get our report, they evaluate it, and 7 months from now, they can say, Ascension Parish, look, your project is on this list and you're going to get this money.
Well, essentially, what they will do is approve our plan. And our plan, by being approved, then, and the projects, and that's why Lucian was saying that it's important that the projects be in the plan, because they'll approve our plan, then they'll incorporate that into the state plan, which will encompass all of our plans, and then it'll go to FEMA on the Washington level for approval of the state plan. At that point, then it's eligible for funding by FEMA.
And Bob, I understand that perfectly, okay? And I guess I'm getting straight to the bottom line is, after all that, the timeline they're going to give us money is in 6 months or maybe a year, 2 years?
It will be at least 6 months. It will be at least 6 months. And you've got to understand the approval process that it has to go through.
But I'm saying is, one of these projects that we're about to spend millions of dollars on, that if we hold out 6 months from now, they may be one of them that can save us some money?
Well, I think you need to look very hard at those lists and decide which ones that you ought to go forward with using our own funds and which might be eligible for HMGP funding. And those that are eligible for HMGP funding, if you've got to prioritize, if you can prioritize in such a way that that particular project would be timed to be eligible for federal funds, I think that'd make a lot of sense.
And that's what I'm thinking about.
It's a government, you know. It's a slow process.
Can I add something to that really quickly? The HMGP funds are generally dependent on their post-disaster funds. So in the event of the next disaster, new funds would be released. So these plans will be on the shelf in that event, but they're also looking to make statewide priorities. That's why they're reviewing this plan on a statewide level, so that they might release extra funds after they go through the process Mr. Bob was talking about. Does that kind of help?
The timeline, you're going to help me out a whole lot.
Okay.
All we can tell you is that we know when we're going to be finished, and we're going to feed it to GOSEP, and we also know that we've done these plans before, and the last time in the first series, I worked on a plan. It was the first plan in, and it was the first plan approved, and it was used as a model, and we've taken that same model, and we've met with FEMA on several occasions, and we've gone to FEMA and GOSEP saying, look, you created a new process, but this process isn't working, and we're getting them to streamline their process even further. So we're doing everything we can to move forward from our standpoint as your consultant and you as a local jurisdiction. However, once it gets out of our hand and it goes to GOSEP and GOSEP takes it to Washington, it's up to you folks every time you go to Washington to hear your senators and your congressmen to say, look, this is a top priority. And you're moving forward in the right direction with a large-scale bond issue. I mean, regardless of what happens, you've already headed down the right road, and hopefully some of this will lessen the load in the long run. All right?
That's it.
It's nice to be up here. Moose and Gwen can attest. I've been up here many a day and many a moon ago. It's good to be back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next, we'll move into our planning and zoning recommendations. Number 16, zoning review ID 1840.08. Mr. Bourgeois. To accept or deny, zoning commission recommends approval.
Yes, gentlemen, tonight we're here to address the issues of the Planning and Zoning Commission, where they have reviewed and recommended that this particular zoning from a crossroad commercial, from a medium intensity residential to crossroad commercial at this spot. We're here tonight to ask you for your either to deny or accept the recommendation of the council or the commission.
Motion, Mr. Dempsey Lambert.
Second.
Second, Mr. Clewart. Any discussion?
Discussion.
Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, Mr. Bourgeois, did we have any opposition on this particular rezoning?
To my knowledge, there might have been some comments made by the staff and maybe a few of the commissioners, but I don't think there was anything from the public.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any opposition? Motion carries. 17, zoning review ID 184108 to accept or deny. Zoning Commission recommends approval.
This is exactly the same area, same intersection. It's just a little bit east of it. Asking for the same action from the council tonight to accept or deny the zoning commission, which was to accept.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dempsey Lambert, second by Mr. Valentine. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. 18, zoning review ID 184208. Zoning Commission recommends approval.
Same intersection. This is Mr. Boyce's property, which is a rural, presently zone rural to crossroad commercial in the same vicinity. Accept or deny.
Move to accept the zoning.
Mr. Valentine makes a motion, second by Mr. Clouard. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, item 20 is the other section of that corner.
Okay, sir.
It's kind of mixed numbered up here.
Okay, we'll do zoning review ID 183607.
Same issue, council members. The commission, it was a rural zoning, requested to be crossroad commercial. We're here tonight to ask you to accept or deny it.
Motion.
Planning Commission
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Shakespeare. In discussion. Mr. Todd Lambert.
Again, Mr. Bourgeois, this particular piece is rural. I don't know about the other three. I think it starts just on that southeast corner is rural. And they had a petition signed about 5 years ago to get all that section rural. So with that, still had no opposition at the zoning meeting on this particular piece of property.
To my understanding, Mr. Councilman, no. The gentleman that was requesting has this building, and he asked to reuse this building, which is already presently there, and it has a present business and part of it. He wants to use the other section of it, and that's why he came to this request and got involved the other three properties with that intersection.
I understand that, but this particular corner is rural, and they had a petition signed to go rural about 5 years ago. That was passed. That whole square from Bayou Narcisse all the way to Weber City, all the way to 431 and Roddy Road.
Yes, sir, that's true.
But no opposition on this particular piece of
Didn't have
property.
any.
I'm going to have to object on this particular one.
Okay, sir. Any more discussion? We have one opposition. Mr. Todd Lambert. Motion carries. Okay, 19.
This is a small planned unit development, gentlemen, and they're acting basically the same thing to rezone it to where it becomes a mixed use of both residential and commercial properties located at the corner of Highway 929 and 42. The Planning Commission has recommended the approval of this spud.
Do I have a motion?
Move to accept the,
Mr. Valentine.
move to accept the planning and zoning.
Second by Mr. Todd Lambert.
Discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion?
Discussion.
Mr. Lower.
Since we are talking about Highway 42, I'd like to ask some questions. Since 42 is one of the most dangerous roads in the state, and we're talking about this being right next to the S curve, which is the most dangerous part of that road. And this might be a little too specific for you, Laverne. So if so, I think we have someone from Ferris Engineering that may be able to answer this for me. But I want to be sure. There was a lot in the minutes about our DOT, the traffic impact studies, and if those recommendations were are going to be followed concerning entrances and exits onto 42, as well as, I understand there's 32 homes in the residential. That's not so much my concern as with the commercial center that's going to be there. What was determined on that and what's being done?
Mr. Lohr, There was a drainage impact study which was done, a traffic impact study was done, and all these were evaluated by CSRS, and they had terms of agreements on the turning lanes to be put in that area, especially on 42. And therefore, all the items that were questioned by the engineering review agent and the staff were actually reviewed and discussed and come to conclusion. Therefore, the planning commission went ahead with the recommendation to accept.
So they are going to follow all the recommendations that are within the...
That's in the concept of this plan, and,
Okay.
and it's down in paper and writing, so we have them in bonding and legal to do so.
And just one last thing, just to make sure I understand it correctly, just from looking at the map, forgive me, first time, a few times looking at things like this. But my main concern is coming out of that S-curve, the oncoming traffic. If someone was to turn left, I want to make sure it's impossible for someone to turn left out of that development directly onto 42, crossing that lane of traffic.
Yes, sir. There was comment made by the engineering review agent, and that was satisfied of the study, of the traffic study, that they would emphasize on that for them to actually take note of that and make sure that it didn't affect the entrance and exits out of that commercial area on 42, where they will have a turning lane. That gradual turn of that road did not affect the study to any effect to make it a more dangerous intersection that's already present. And one other note on this, they're giving a half an acre to the present fire station next door. There will be sewer and water available to the fire station, which I think is a amenity to the parish. And the area that is there now is presently pasture. They're going to also allow, to my understanding, to let Bon Lu come across and possibly tie into that sewer system, which we all know they got problems over there. So there are some features in this that may not be exactly of all spuds that's coming along. They get to the point of where they understanding our parish problems and trying to help us out with it. And that's just a comment that was made on the commission.
Mr. Shakespeare.
One of the things I wanted to point out that I think is valuable about on the rezoning and the spuds that they have there is that this plan that you see right here becomes law, and they have to do that. And the input from the parish, as Councilman Lower was saying, on turning lanes, on fire stations, and sewer help, and things of that sort, as well as open land, are put into the plan, and we do have an input in it. So I encourage all the councilmen to do this. We just rezoned Four Corners to Crossroads Commercial with no input as to the plan from the parish, so to speak. Their basic plan, once they meet the zoning regulations, they can do their plan and turning lanes and things of that sort are not in that because it's part of their zone thing. So I would encourage us to try to get whole developments like this that we can have some input and put some limitations and protections for the people throughout. And for that reason, that's why I would support something like this, because it does protect the parish.
Okay, thank you.
One more final thing. As far as right-of-way on 42, was that incorporated the eventual expansion of 42 that's being studied? Do you know if that was looked at, or are we going to have to...
There appears to be some common ground in that area that's left open for improvements of that road in the future. And again, the turn lane was part of that agreement for them. And actually, sometimes the parish cannot ask for that, but this company came in with that on the table to begin with, understanding that that would be a reckoning point to deal with. So they satisfied that pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois.
Question to Mr. Bourgeois. Mr. Laverne, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Valentine?
Yeah, just for future reference, Mr. Bourgeois, I know we kind of in a transition period in the planning and zoning, But since some of the councilmen were asking, could we have some comments? We used to have comments that were made at these planning and zoning meetings when we approve something that's accepted or denied. We have some information. For instance, this was a very good example. The SPUD pretty much lays out exactly what was requested and what the contractor or developer is going to do. But on some of these other zoning, which Mr. Chicks and I was talking about, Mr. Lambert was concerned about, it would be of value to councilmen to have that if there was some discussion, if there was opposition, and what questions were asked. We used to get that, and I would say that was a couple of years ago. We hadn't got that information lately. But it would help the council in deciding whether, to look into everybody has a lot on their plate, whether to look into an item a little deeper or not. Typically, we allow the planning and zoning, that's what their function is. They come to us with a recommendation, but especially some councilmen may not be able to attend that meeting and need to know if there are some concerns about the development or the rezoning. Follow me?
There shouldn't be no problem with that. I thought all y'all may have had a packet similar to what I have here, and they got a lot of that information in here that goes along.
They do, but Mr. Lambert was asking, so it didn't really say whether it had opposition. If it doesn't have opposition, in other words, it just needs to say no opposition.
Correct. Well, we'll surely bear that in mind and make sure we address that next. I've got one more coming up. I may not be able to answer that.
Okay.
Mr. Martinez?
We're going to make some movement in planning and zoning in the next week or so. We're going to move Chris Ewing, who's an engineer there, to start reviewing plans and hopefully have him at the planning commission meeting and the council meetings. So still hadn't hired a director, but this will help us get through a transition period, and hopefully we can leave him there. And it'll be a cost savings to us if he can be a full-time review person.
Right.
And maybe we can lower the contract with Mr. Ascension. So,
good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Parish.
Thank you. Next, we get into our public hearing ordinance section. Before we get going, I'd like to tell all councilmen we will defer on 31 and 32. They'll defer for 30 days. Number 21, public hearing to consider an ordinance to revoke a drainage servitude, Lloyd M. DeLone property, revocation of drainage servitude, 10-foot drainage servitude on both sides of an 8 to 12-foot top-width ditch traversing the rear of Lot B3, Council District 7. Mrs. Manda?
Do you want to open the public hearing? No. Okay, I'll read the ordinance. To revoke two 10-foot drainage servitudes measured from the top bank of an 8 to 12-foot width ditch traversing the northerly one-third. Am I not talking into the mic? Am I? Okay. All right. The northerly one-third of Lot B3. A survey map showing the subdivision of Lot B into Lots B1 through B4, being a portion of the Lloyd M. Dulaine property situated in Section 29, Township 8, Section South, Range 3 East, Southeastern Land District, east of the Mississippi River, Ascension Parish, Louisiana. Be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Council as the governing authority for the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, in lawful session hereby revokes two 10-foot drainage servitudes measured from the top bank of an 8 to 12-foot width ditch traversing the northerly one-third of Lot B3 as shown in the aforementioned map prepared by William C. Fiesel, surveyor. More thoroughly described, Lot B3 being a portion of Lot B of the Lloyd M. Dulaine property situated in Section 29, Township 8 South, Range 3 East, Southeastern Land District, east of the Mississippi River, Ascension Parish, Louisiana. Thank you. All other public servitudes as may affect the subject property are hereby reserved.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Open public hearing by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Johnson.
Motion to close.
Motion closed by Mr. Thompson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Todd Lambert. #23, public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the Ascension Parish zone. Oh, I'm sorry. I need a motion to vote on the ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Joseph. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. 23, public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the Ascension Parish zoning map from business park to industrial. LJG Land Company property, also known as Ascension Commercial Park, and the SLC Incorporated property, 370, 17-acre tracts for the LG Grisafi and the SLC Incorporated, located on the northerly side of Louisiana Highway 30, approximately 523 feet southeast of Louisiana Highway 73. Ms. Amanda?
Whereas the Parish of Ascension has in effect a comprehensive plan of zoning, and pursuant to that plan, a parish-wide development code was adopted by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority, which became effective on June 1st, 1999. Whereas the Ascension Parish Development Code provides for a procedure for its amendment to allow the rezoning of property to a different classification. Whereas the herein below described property is located as such that rezoning the property is in conformity with the adjacent land uses, in conformity with the general land use plan of the parish, not injurious to adjacent properties, and fully meets the qualifications for rezoning set forth under Louisiana law.
Motion to open the hearing.
Oh, sorry. Be it ordained that the following described property be rezoned from business park to industrial. LJG Land Company property, also known as the Ascension Commercial Park, and the SLC Inc. property, 370.17-acre tracts for the LG Grisafi and SLC Inc., located on the northerly side of Louisiana Highway 30, approximately 523 feet southeast of Louisiana 73, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from business park to industrial, all as more particularly described on attached Exhibit A. Be it further ordained that the land use map of the Ascension Parish Development Code be amended to reflect these rezonings, and that the Office of Planning and Zoning be authorized to make such changes.
Move to open the public hearing.
Mr. Valentine moves to open, second by Mr. Cluart. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, come forward. You'll have 3 minutes.
Motion to close.
Motion to close by Mr. Todd Lambert.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lohr. We need a motion to vote on the ordinance.
Just move to the next. Yeah, move to the next. Put it off.
Number 24.
Number 24.
Okay. 24.
I move the ordinance.
Mr. Valentine moves to accept the ordinance, seconded by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. 25, public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the Ascension Parish zoning map by rezoning a certain parcel of land from medium-intensity residential to planned unit development concept, conceptual plan of planned unit development. Legacy Oaks, located on the north side of Louisiana Highway 429, Cornerview, approximately 200 foot west of Albert Boudreaux Road, for Legacy Oaks Land Development, LLC, by Benchmark Group, LLC, Council District 3. Ms. Manda?
Whereas the Parish of Ascension has in effect a comprehensive plan of zoning, and pursuant to that plan, a parish-wide development code was adopted by Ascension Parish Governing Authority, which became effective on June 1st, 1999. Whereas the Ascension Parish Development Code provides for a procedure for its amendment to allow the rezoning of property to a different classification. Whereas the herein below described property is located as such that rezoning the property is in conformity with adjacent land uses, in conformity with the general land use plan of the parish, not injurious to adjacent properties, and fully meets the qualifications for rezoning set forth under Louisiana law. Be it ordained that the following described property be rezoned from medium-intensity residential to planned unit development concept. Conceptual plan of planned unit development, Legacy Oaks, located on the north side of Louisiana Highway 429, approximately 200 feet west of Albert Boudreaux Road, for Legacy Oaks, all is more particularly described on Exhibit A. Said conceptual plan is subject to the following contingencies. The water wells on the property will be plugged. Green Oaks Lane will be extended to include a second access onto Cornerview Road. and the road stub out within the development may be eliminated so that there is no loss of lots in creating the second access. The developer will dedicate a 15-foot servitude along Main Street to the Parish of Ascension. Be it further ordained that the land use map of Ascension Parish Development Code be amended to reflect these rezonings, and that the Office of Planning and Zoning be authorized to make such changes.
Motion by Mr. Dempsey Lambert, second by Mr. Thompson.
Motion to close, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to close. We need a motion for the ordinance.
Moved on the ordinance,
26.
Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Dempsey Lambert,
Second.
second by Mr. Benny Johnson. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. 27, public hearing to consider an ordinance authorizing acquisition of property from Robert Dale Painter Jr. and Jean Marie Painter, and to pay damages for the purpose of constructing road improvements on Joseph Ario Road. Mr. Crawford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of said ordinance is to acquire a movable property from Robert Dale Painter Jr. and Jean Marie Painter, and to pay damages for the purpose of constructing road improvements on Joseph Ario Road for a total price of $80,000 as part of the Ascension Parish Road Widening Program. Of the $80,000 payment price, $50,876 represents payment for damages. Be it ordained, the Ascension Parish Council authorizes the purchase of the following property, inclusive of all improvements located thereon, which property is situated in the Parish of Ascension, located on Joseph Ario Road, in the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, and to pay compensation and damages for the loss of the property and the residents thereon for the purchase price of $80,000. A certain tract of land described as parcel 27, being a portion of a larger tract of land owned by Robert D. Painter Jr., located in Section 28, Township 8 South, R3E, Range 3E, Southeast District, east of the Mississippi River, and being a portion of an 85-foot required road right-of-way along Joseph Ario Road. The boundary of said parcel 27 is more particularly described as follows. A certain parcel of ground situated in Section 28, Township 8 South, Range 3 East, Southeastern Land District, east of the Mississippi River, Ascension Parish, Louisiana, being shown on a map or plan of survey prepared by Clint G. Quintmall, PLS, dated January 3, 2008, designated as parcel 27 and being described as follows. Commence at the northwest corner of Section 27, Township 8 South, Range 3 East, thence proceed south 0 degrees, 0 feet, 34 inches west, a distance of 60.25 feet to the point of beginning. Thence proceed south 0 degrees, 0 feet, 34 inches west, a distance of 293.90 feet to a point and corner. Thence proceed south 88 degrees, 54 feet, 27 inches west, a distance of 48.78 feet to a point and corner. Thence proceed north 1 degrees, 19 feet, 33 inches east, a distance of 22.34 feet to a point and corner. Thence proceed north 10 degrees, 15 feet, 58 inches west, a distance of 237.25 feet along the arc of a curve, 238.57 feet, with a radius of 655 feet to a point and corner. Thence proceed north 70 degrees, 50 feet, 38 inches west, a distance of 45.16 feet to a point and corner. Thence proceed north 79 degrees, 42 feet, 0 inches east, a distance of 135.42 feet to the point of beginning, said parcel containing 0.432 acres more or less. This ordinance is being adopted in conformity with Section 6.01 of the Ascension Parish Charter. The purchase of the property is subject to approval by the parish attorney and contingent upon the sellers being able to deliver a good and merchantable title Tommy Martinez, Parish President, is authorized to sign all necessary documents on behalf of the parish.
Motion to open up for public.
Motion to open public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by, anyone wishing to talk on item 27, come forward. You'll have 3 minutes.
Motion to close.
Motion to close by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Cluart. The ordinance.
Motion.
Need a motion, Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Cluart.
Discussion.
Any discussion?
I have some.
Mr. Valentine.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Crawford, as I read this, this was brought to us, if I remember right, as an emergency item last meeting. And as I read this, I was under the impression the last meeting that this included a house. And this says here that it says pay compensation for damages for the loss of property and the residence thereon, for $80,000. As I read the breakdown, though, it says we're paying $30,000 there takes about for the property, which is .04 of an acre, and we're paying $50,876 in damages. Are we buying a house, or are we just buying property?
We're buying the house and property.
We're not buying the house.
We were led.
Okay, I got a problem with us spending $80,000 for .0436, if I'm not mistaken, for of land on Roddy Road. Now, we did not get any explanation on this when we put this on the agenda last time, and it appears that, you know, I was under the impression, Mr. Lambert, I hadn't really discussed this with anybody else, that there was a house involved in this, which is understandable.
Sure. What this is basically you have half an acre of somebody's front yard. The right-of-way line is so close to their house that you have what's called proximity damage to the house. It's significant on this particular house. This house is located in the middle of the curve that we're trying to straighten out on Joseph area.
I'm familiar with it. I was born and raised there.
We've got a right-of-way line about 15 feet off of the front of the house. So we're taking their parking areas, and it's evaluated by appraisals. That's not something that I did or like that.
Where's
It's
the
based
appraisal?
on appraisals. Yes,
Where's
sir.
the appraisal?
I have them. I can give them to you.
I mean, we should have probably got, you know, when you buy something of this multitude, now you're saying it's a half acre, but it's just actually .4 of an acre, what it amounts to. It's not a half acre land.
I agree with you that it is.
Now, so we paying for the damages because we're coming close to his house?
That's part of it, yes, sir. You're paying for two things.
But he's going to continue to live in his house?
Yes, sir. But his house has been damaged. The property has been damaged as a result of the right-of-way being significantly closer to his front door than it was in the past.
Now, how long has this been going on?
Oh, my gosh.
A long time.
Since 2001.
Okay, so this is the 2001 road widening project, and here we are, 2008, and we're just now settling up.
Well, this is the last one. This is the last one. We have actually a right of entry onto the property that allows us to begin construction, and we have begun, Joseph area, of course, is under construction at this point. We've actually constructed in front of this house now, under that right of entry agreement.
Well, I guess my dissatisfaction is, one, it was an emergency item, and I don't know the ramifications of why it was an emergency item last meeting, but, you know, something like this really should have went through transportation meeting so it could be discussed, and at least the appraisals and everything could be laid out for councilmen, you know, where the transportation committee should have made the decision. It's just difficult for me to sit here and pay somebody $80,000 on Roddy Road for, you know, .40 without knowing the property, seeing the property, at least having some visual pictures of it that could have been brought to us, and the extent of his damages. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the property is appraised for one certain thing, but we're paying $50,000 in damages. Who determined that?
The appraisers.
The appraiser?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Any discussion? Mr. Lambert?
Mr. Bob, I'm still kind of like George. Is it because of the depreciation? Because a lot of the wide roading projects are going to depreciate some property because they're going to get closer to the houses. in many incidents. This is just one that's getting a little bit closer, so.
It's really a matter of what's called proximity damage. For example, and I'm not an appraiser, and so bear that in mind that I maybe can't give you the detailed answer, but essentially the closer that you come to the house, the more that you damage the remainder of the property. There is a certain extent that if you come so close, you might be better off to acquire the entire property rather than damage the property that's remaining. In this case, long drawn-out affair was going on long before I got here as to the negotiations on this particular property. And it all centered about how close that the right-of-way line was to the house. And it created the proximity damage, which is recognized by appraisers as damage to the remaining property.
And I guess how much is the remaining property as far as quantity of property?
Quantity of land?
Yes.
I think it's about an acre.
Acre left or acre total?
I recall that it's a little over an acre total.
And the house?
Remaining.
So we didn't get an appraisal of the house and the total property to see what's the difference, because it might not be.
That's essentially how they do appraisals. They do a before and after. In other words, please don't use these numbers in cooperation or in reference to this particular property, but assume you had a $180,000 piece of property and you took the frontage off of it, and the value of the land in that particular area might be worth, say, $25,000. But your damage, that you damaged the remainder of the property, might be that much or more, and because of how close that you came to the improvement. The other option is to either buy the house or move the house back further onto the property, which was determined to be a higher cost.
So it is a frame home sitting on this property?
No, it's a brick home. It's a brick house.
All right.
Any more discussion? Mr. Joseph?
Mr. Bob, and it's on Joseph Area Road, correct?
Yes, sir.
How long that road been in planning?
Well, I could... 2001. Since 2001,
Okay.
It's been under
So in
design.
2001, that road would have cost us, say, I'm going to say roughly about $1 million. Today, that road costs us $4 million.
Yeah, that's correct, absolutely.
All right, so the 7 years that we wasted around playing around with this, it went up $3 million, roughly. We just using these inflation costs
Yeah,
and all.
the only question that I would raise on that is that when you said playing around, we had a case of where offers were made to the property owner and they declined. The option that the parish had, and probably always have, and maybe even have to this day, is to expropriate the property and go to court and let the court determine what the damages are to the property. Rather than a negotiated settlement, you'll get a court settlement. Now, I'm going to say this, but it's been my experience, a long time working for governmental agencies, that when you go to court and you've got a party that's a elderly gentleman, a World War II veteran with a dependent child, you're going to pay whatever they want when you go into court. I'm almost positive that you're going to lose. This is a reasonable negotiated settlement based on appraisals, and it's I think, extremely important to do something with this property and move forward. Hindsight, would I have done it different at the beginning in 2001? Maybe. I would have liked to. When I got here, this was the only property left.
I got a question.
Mr. Clore?
Mr. Bob, basically trying to settle this thing in an expedient manner. We're looking at our contractor that's working on the road that we may have liquidated damages or something, or some type of delays that's going to cost us, and we'll be back charged on the road.
You always have that possibility. We know that any time that you stop a contractor from working, you could be subject with delay cost, and those could be significant. And I'd rather we did not get into that. I mean, it is extensive, and while you might win on one hand, you might pay your damages out on the other, too. So
Thank you.
all of that has to be taken into consideration.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, and I appreciate all the discussion. I want to commend Mr. Turner on this. He's done a great job. As far as the transportation meetings, Mr. Valentine, from here out, we'll have all these updates. This was an emergency, and we are proceeding forward. So I would appreciate the support to move on. Thank you.
Mr. Valentine.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Lamb, for that. I understand this is in your district and it has been carrying on for a long time, but that's one thing that, as you as new council members sit around this table, when you make a decision on some $80,000, you need the information in front of you. One, we really wasn't told why it was an emergency, except that it was going to save us money, but nobody really pointed out how much money it was going to save us, what the problem was. So, I mean, we're talking about something that's been carried on for a long time. I agree with you. But there again, the information has to be given to council members, who's the legislative body, to do something like that. With ethics reform and everything else going on in this state, we need to be prudent with what we do also. An appraisal, all that could handle. Even if we'd have got that information without going, we should have been given that information, and that's what I want to point out. I cannot make a qualified judgment on handing out $80,000 of taxpayers' money unless I got verification that it is. You know, that it's reasonable. And that's my objection.
I assure you that in future acquisitions, you'll have full information.
Shake Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate it, Mr. Bob, and we trust in your judgment very much, and I want to echo Mr. Lambert's. We want to get this as quickly as possible, but we just want to make sure we do have a transportation committee. And in order to expedite these meetings as such, even if we have to call an emergency meeting instead of putting something of this magnitude on as emergency item, a 45-minute discussion could have been held at that time, and then we could have come here and voted on this at this time. And that's all we're saying, is that we can get that information at that time, and that would help us a lot.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Martinez.
The more we're going to deal with right-of-way issues, the more problems we're going to have. And basically what you're going to find out when you go to widen roads from here on out with the cost of real estate in Ascension Parish, a lot of times it's going to depend on how wide you want to widen them. But in some instances, the right-of-way acquisition is probably going to cost more than the road construction. And what happened in a lot of cases, like Mr. Painter, you don't settle here, and you go ahead and expropriate, and then you put the money in the bank, and you give him, the court will award him that money, then he can come back and do an inverse condemnation suit and get more money. But I agree, we need to start getting this information to you, but once we start getting heavier and deeper into right-of-way acquisitions, we'll end up having to hire our own real estate in-house people to handle this stuff. And it's just a wave of the future, and that's what's going to happen.
Any more discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. 29, public hearing to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map for rezone a certain parcel of land from business park to industrial. Maurice Indes and Dana Buford property, Lot 6 of the north quarter of the southwest quarter tract for Gator Environmental Waste Solutions, LLC, for property located on the east side of Louisiana Highway 70, approximately 4,200 feet south of Raymond Touye Road. Mr. Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of said ordinance is to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map by rezoning a certain parcel of land from business park to industrial. Whereas the Parish of Ascension has in effect a comprehensive plan of zoning, and pursuant to that plan, a parish-wide development code was adopted by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority, which became effective on June 1st, 1999. Whereas the Ascension Parish Development Code provides for a procedure for its amendment to allow the rezoning of property to a different classification. Whereas the herein below described property is located as such that rezoning the property is in conformity with adjacent land uses, in conformity with the general land use plan of the parish, not injurious to adjacent properties, and fully meets the qualifications for rezoning set forth under Louisiana law. Be it ordained that the following described property be rezoned from business park to industrial. The property description is the Maurice Indest and Dana Buford property, Lot 6, and the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter tract for Gator Environmental Waste Solutions, LLC, for property located on the east side of Louisiana Highway 70, approximately 4200 south of Raymond Touye Road, all as more fully described in the records of the Clerk of Court, Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana. Be it further ordained that the land use map of the Ascension Parish Development Code be amended to reflect these rezonings, and that the Office of Planning and Zoning be authorized to make such changes.
Need a motion to open public hearing?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Mr. Cluart. Well, if you need to speak on item 29, you will be given 3 minutes.
Move to close, Chair.
Move to close by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Lower. We need to move on the ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Any opposition? Mr. Joseph? Mr. Joseph opposes. Motion carries. We will defer on items 31, 32.
Move to go in executive session.
Mr. Lambert, motion to go in executive session. Second by Mr. Valentine.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Before we go, could Mr. Crawford come back up to the mic?
Sure. Mr. Crawford.
Mr. Crawford, just introduce yourself. Some of the councilmen here may not know you, so you may need to introduce yourself and your position.
My name is Keith Crawford. I'm an assistant district attorney with the 23rd Judicial District. I will be assisting as needed Ms. Manda for the parish.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Motion to reconvene, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Mr. Thompson to reconvene.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Valentine.
I move that we authorize the administration to move forward on a settlement of J.D. Broussard Road.
Second. Motion by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Lohr. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Lambert.